So much more data.
Much more data, but at the end, it's not just for the engineer, for the companies, and to well maintain the train, but also for the benefit of the passengers.
Hello, I'm Giles Gherson, and this is Toronto Talks, the voice of Toronto's business community. What are we talking about? Each episode is a conversation with top business leaders about how they're shaping growth, driving competitiveness, and building up our economy. It's about what they believe it will take to make sure the Toronto region remains one of the world's great global cities. Here's today's conversation. Arthur, welcome to Toronto Talks. Great to have you here. I think what's really interesting and why it's great to have you here is Toronto is in the middle of a huge transit build-out. The Toronto region is, I should say, and which started a number of years ago. We're kind of in the middle of it now. And the company that you represent, Transdev Canada, plays a significant role in all of this. It's a very important company, but hardly anybody, I imagine, knows the role you play. So we thought it'd be really useful to have you come and talk a little bit about the role that Transdev plays in sort of the scheme of things in the transit world. And of course, you don't just operate in Canada; you operate across the world. And so I think it's really interesting to get a sense of what experiences you've had and what you bring then to the Canadian market and the Toronto market specifically. So just to start off, though, maybe tell us a little bit about Transdev and the role you play. I mean, just in general terms. We'll get into specifics in a minute.
Of course. Transdev, that is the mobility company. So we are really a multimodal operator, really all modes of transportation, from rail, buses, ferries, gondola, bicycles, all modes of transportation. That's really the approach. We are a worldwide leader. We operate in more than 20 countries. So all different contexts, environments. That's where we bring our value, our knowledge, our experience and challenges as well. And what we bring also to the Canadian market, and that's really unique. When you look at the global market, there is no equivalent in terms of private company which are multimodal companies. So when we speak with an authority, with a client, could be a private one, could be a city, we can answer with all modes of transportation. It's not just a one-way thinking with just one mode. We look at the situation and we can give advice on how to manage that.
And so, when Transdev came to Canada, presumably it was a very mature company, and as you said, very multimodal. How did it start, though? It presumably started with one mode, and I'm assuming in France. Is that right?
Oh, we started with really humble, situation with just a couple of buses around Montreal, and then
in Montreal, okay,
in south of Montreal, and then we grew the business. We grew the business all across Canada. So for the past 8 years, so that was a fantastic development through RFPs, M&As as well, and organic growth. So we really developed the business, and we are really in all 6 provinces, 1 territory. So we have a large footprint.
So when you talk about being an operator, I mean, that's, it's an important word. I think when people think about transiting in Canada, and particularly in Toronto, you say, well, you've got the provincial government is responsible for the GO commuter rail system. The TTC is responsible for the transit system. They're the operators, but no, maybe not. Transdev plays a role. So what role, how do you explain a little bit about what operating a system means for a private company?
In Canada, especially in Ontario, it starts by providing the drivers, find the right talents, find the mechanics. That's as simple as that, but that's complex. That's
so under contract to the TTC
or under the contract of Metrolinx, of course.
Yeah.
So we provide the workforce. We train the workforce. We find the talents. Sometimes we bring also, and we give advice to our clients how we should design, and that's part of some of PPP projects. We bring ideas, we challenge the projects. That's why some clients are asking Transdev to be in the project.
And but when you say operator, it sort of almost implies that you find, say, the workforce, you train the workforce, but they are still employed by the TTC or Metrolinx, no? Or are they employed by you?
They are employed by us.
Okay.
So that's the
responsible to TTC.
No, that's totally separate.
Okay.
So really, when for project like the Hazel McCallion line, we recruit the employee, and the employee would be Transdev employees.
Okay.
But they can come from everywhere.
Right.
So some of our workers, they come from TTC, or they can come from any kind of industry.
Okay. So let's think about I know one of the big projects obviously that is underway now is the Ontario line, significant expansion of the subway system for Toronto. We see stations being built now. The line is being built. Tunneling is taking place. What sort of role would you play in a project like that?
At the early stage, that's something that we promote a lot, just to involve an operator like Transdev. At the early stage, it's great because we'll bring our expertise from everywhere on the place. So basically, we will challenge, of course, the designer on the way they do, and they.
So you're brought in right in the very early stages.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I believe it brings a lot of value of PPP project, because of course that brings it's a different point of view. Of course, we are looking for the long term. What would be the cost? What would be the benefit for the passengers?
Right.
And I believe it's pretty aligned with authorities also sometimes, because it's more long-term vision for us. A good transit system is a transit system with a high level of ridership, a huge usage from the population. Right. That would be a successful one. And that matters for us. So all the KPIs around that, the safety KPIs, the on-time performance, the commercial speed will matter a lot, because we know that will play a big role for the ridership. But not only that, because as I said, we are a multimodal operator, so we always think about all the modes of transportation around the backbone. It's not just the backbone. If we want that the backbone works, we need to have around that a good network of bus, a good network of last mile, first mile. Everything should work if we want that the big system work.
Now, Arthur, presumably, if I'm the TTC and I'm responsible for the Ontario line being built, along with the provincial government, Metrolinx, I also want to maximize the use of it. I want as many passengers as I can get. I'm interested in all the things that you've just mentioned. So where would you come in and say, here's an idea, or here's something we discovered in another city, that you might want to think about here? I'm thinking that's how you're kind of expressing it. What would be some of the things that you would bring to a project like this?
As an example, we brought the signaling topic. As you may know,
big issue here. Yeah.
That's a challenge, but that's also an opportunity to improve a lot the transit project
for faster headways. And
exactly, you spoke during the transit symposium about that. Yeah. But that's a key challenge. It's a quick win. It's a low-hanging fruit. Just if we standardize with signaling for LRTs, but I would speak more about LRTs. That could increase the commercial speed and the benefit for the passenger. Of course, the passenger, they
want faster trips.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's that as simple as that. They want to go to point A to point B faster than with the cars.
Yes.
So we have to consider everything around that.
So that's hopeful, because I think one of the projects that that was troubled, I think, for quite a while was the Eglinton Crosstown project here. Now it's up and running. I think people are very pleased with it, and it's going to, I think, play a significant role in easing congestion and moving more people to transit. But it was a long project, and one of the things that I think that people have talked about during it is the issues like signaling, getting the right sort of signaling technology, so that you could move these LRT vehicles much more quickly.
But again, I believe the question is just the early involvement of an operator, and the operator. At the early stage of each major project, we should have an operator, but not just as an advisor. The operator who will really operate.
Well, you're going to use it, so
who will be accountable for the
it's hard to imagine that we plan projects without the operator at the table, but it sounds like we did. It seems to me that these projects have evolved quite substantially in terms of how they're managed and the governance of them and the planning. In relatively few years, it seems like they've changed quite a lot, but it's still hard to imagine that say 15 years ago when some of these projects were planned, that they didn't bring the operator in right at the start. But my sense is it was more sequential.
But that's correct. But now the game is changing.
Yeah.
And I believe the situation is totally different, and that would be the benefit of the upcoming projects. So, of course, we learn also. We try things, and I believe there is a real importance now on what the operator are saying in those projects, because we are a small piece of the stakes at the beginning, of course, because everything is around the building, is construction, is technology. But sometimes, because of that, we miss the operation piece and the passenger piece, the ridership. What would be the real efficiency? Not just running a transit, just operating them, but with higher ridership, the performance, the quality of that. We are working around those major projects, but it should benefit the population at the end.
As you mentioned, at the Board of Trade, we had a conference recently on multimodal transit and transportation. And because what we want to do is bring together some of these ideas to make sure that we had a seamless system. I think, as you point out, one of the problems with transit can be that each part of the system works well, but doesn't connect well. And so, and I think it really becomes, as I tried to say in my remarks then, you want to maximize the effectiveness and efficiency of the assets you do have, because you're going to build new ones, but really to get sure to maximize the number of people using it, you want the system to kind of connect well. But you mentioned at the outset of this conversation that Transdev manages, you said, multimodal systems, so trains, buses, and bicycles. So explain that. So is it what you're saying? I get off at the subway stop, and I find a bicycle from a bike share service that you might control or operate, or what's the connection between operating the transit system and a bicycle ride share?
It would start with simple things. How long does it take to go from the bicycle station to the train station? How long does it take?
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be more than 20 minutes.
Okay. So is the one available then?
Because it's you are on the path to go there is not really practical, and that's a key challenge. We have to sometimes it's better to just 5 minutes walk, or even less than that, 200 meters around the station. So the way we implement the bicycle station is key. That's the same for the bus. The bus station should be really, really close. We know that each time that you change of mode, you can lose nearly 20% of ridership. Yeah. So if you want to reduce this percentage, you have to design really closely all modes of transportation, just to go from one mode to another one. So it's why the look for the upcoming project is really a global project. If we want that it works, really looking at what's the network design, the bus of the network design, bicycles, could be the ferries, could be the gondola, everything should be linked if we want to create really successful transit project.
I mean, as you know, one of the issues that the Board of Trade has been pushing is we've got fare integration now in our region, thanks to the provincial government is spending a fair bit of money to underwrite the single fare system, which is terrific. We fought for that for a long time, but now we're very much asking for service integration. And a bit like what you're talking about, we've got quite a few municipal transit systems that all operate in this region, whether it's My Way in Mississauga, whether it's the North York subway system, or the York Region subway system, and Peel and so on, and then coming into the Toronto itself where the TTC operates, and then the GO system operating as well as a commuter rail system. The schedules aren't at all connected. And I think one of the things we learned was that the European rail system is a single scheduling system, united, so passengers can go from one to the next easily. We don't even have that in the Toronto region. But is that something that Transdev can play a role in, for example? Because when you're talking about a multimodal system, it's being able to go from a bus, as you said, to a subway system, to a subway.
We can bring an added value on that. Just bringing an example how it works elsewhere, how it works in Europe, how it works in Australia, in the US as well. And I believe there is a strong benefit with a single authority, I would say, of course, to manage the fares, as you said, sometimes to have the same, information.
Right.
Because everything we do to ease the way to use the
So
system.
wayfinding, for example, is very different.
Oh, we can find in Europe, like looking at Transport for London. There is just one brand, just one site, just one fare for everybody living there. It's simple. It works.
Yeah.
The population doesn't care who is doing the job.
Yeah.
They care how simple it is for them just to go to A to B. That's the goal. That's really the goal. So everything that we are doing all collectively, and we need to, all the stakeholders will play a positive and will have a positive impact for the population.
When you look at the transit system in the Toronto region, what are the big gaps then to you in terms of a well-functioning multimodal system that could maximize usage? And obviously maximizing usage reduces congestion on our roads. So there's a huge benefit to that.
There are a lot of, wonderful and great projects ongoing.
Yeah.
So it's coming.
Yeah.
It's really coming. And you talk about Ontario line. Ontario line will bring a lot of added value for the population, and in terms of commercial speed, to move from a place to another. So lots of great things. Maybe we can do a bit better, in terms of integration.
Yeah. That seems to be the big issue.
A bit more.
Yeah.
Just, thinking and be on the population side, just seamless on the fares. I believe it's really a great initiative. We just push more and more, even maybe on the information side.
Well,
information is key.
Yeah, and the difference, I think right now, GO system, TTC, the different municipal transit agencies all have different wayfinding, so it's not common. So if you're a passenger, you're not going to see the same kind of information across the system. It'll be different each time you cross a municipal border, basically. And I think that's what you're alluding to.
So it would be a benefit.
Yeah.
I'm convinced it would be a benefit. That's not from Transdev, but we are saying that, lots of major authorities across the world, they are just one single website, just to say, or one single apps. I believe that something will play a positive role, positive impact for Toronto. That's a given.
Right.
That's really
Now, as the operator of the Ontario line, when it is up and running, which is probably 5 or 6 years away now, but time is marching on, we're going to have driverless trains. These are going to be in a sense, automated trains, which you see around the world, but I think are relatively new here. Talk a little bit about that. That's going to be a new thing for the TTC system, I think, to have driverless trains. But I think what it means is a fully automated system can move much more quickly. I think that's the logic.
Ontario line will be really a showroom. That's the high end in terms of transit system. The way forward, just to be a bit more technical. So everything is automatized. You have the screen doors. You can increase the number of trains per hour by 30%.
Really?
That's huge. That's really improving when you
because
have...
there's safety.
Yes,
so the driver or the train coming in, there's no likelihood anybody's going to do anything.
Exactly.
So he can move more quickly. Right now, the trains, as you know, the TTC is always interesting. They come in very slowly into the station.
Yeah, for safety reasons.
But there's long pauses through a station, right?
Exactly.
The amount of time spent in a station is actually quite long.
So that will really improve, especially for rush hour, when you have a major event, when it's crowded.
Yeah.
It will improve a lot. So you have more safety, you will have more frequency for the train, more capacity. So really something really, the high end, even in North America, that would be, we can be proud of that.
Well, that's going to be exciting. And again, really interesting, because on the Ontario line, you'll have essentially very different trains with, as you said, on the stations, you have these screens preventing people from getting to the train until the train has arrived. You'll have signaling that's much quicker. You'll have automated trains, very different from the rest of from lines, say 1 and 2. Does that work well to have sort of very different systems on different lines of a subway system? Does that happen in other cities?
Of course. That's continuous improvement.
Okay.
And we have to deal with innovation, even in this kind of project. Every year you have new innovation coming, and we have to consider like AI. That's AI. It's also a piece of innovation in the Ontario line. We will have, the capacity. We will collect the data. We can anticipate any cracks in the rail. We will have the opportunity to reduce the service interruption, which would benefit again for the passengers.
So preventative maintenance,
Exactly. Everything is around that.
Yeah.
We can monitor pretty much everything on the train, which is also new.
So much more data.
Much more data, but at the end, it's not just for the engineer, for the companies, and to well maintain the train, but also for the benefit of the passengers. Reduce the service interruption is the key element.
Oh, absolutely.
Punctuality is a top priority also for the passengers.
So we'll see, I think, something very different then when the Ontario line opens in terms of speed of the trains, the way they come into the station and leave the station, the amount of time they spend in the station, the headway, which is the gap between trains, will be shorter. It sounds like.
Exactly. Just to give you an example, on the line 1, the commercial speed is around 30 kilometers. In Ontario line, it would be 40 kilometers. The commercial speed. So it's much more faster. So
and you see that in Europe. I mean, I think it's interesting I was in London recently. I was in Paris earlier in the year, and it does strike you that the trains come into the station quite quickly. They open the doors, people get in, they shut the doors, off they go quite quickly, compared to here where they kind of seems more leisurely. And part of it is, I think, on large portions of the system now, we've got fairly old signaling, so there's safety reasons why they have to slow down for certain periods. But then when they come into the station, as I've said, they come in quite slowly, and it seems like a long pause. It doesn't seem like you're in a hurry. It seems more like, more leisurely, as I say. So that will be different. That will be quite exciting, I think.
Oh, definitely. That will bring a lot. Definitely, but because it's the high end in terms of transit system, GOA4. So it's really the last version.
But Arthur's going to be interested because once the Ontario line is open and people experience this kind of faster movement, I think there'll be pressure, I'm assuming, on lines 1 and 2 for people to say, well, why do I not have this? Why is it so much slower on these lines? I mean, I can assume that there'll be a lot of pressure to upgrade those systems.
All the big cities around the world, they are doing that, just upgrade on all the metro lines just to bring them to a GOA4, so the high end in terms of automation.
Right, it's fascinating. Last thing, we're running out of time here, but this is a great conversation. I know that you mentioned when you talked about multimodal, you said gondolas. And I know that in Europe and in some other places, gondolas are becoming a form of transit, not just to go up a mountainside for tourists, but actually to move commuters. Yeah. Is there a prospect of that in a city like Toronto?
Oh, well, I really believe.
Where could you imagine one, for example?
Oh, the first one, I would imagine it would be from the Toronto center to the island, just in the front. It could be a way not just to replace the ferries, but just in complement. Yeah. And that brings a lot. It brings, it's as a transportation mode, but it's also something which could be iconic for a city. The difference between, I would say, LRT and a gondola system is 5 times cheaper.
5 times cheaper?
5 times cheaper. It's faster.
Well, there's no tunneling.
No tunneling. It's faster to build. So if you want to go fast, if we want to go cheap, if we want to be effective, it makes sense. But
can it have the passengers? The number of passengers?
The passenger, it's a bit lower than the LRT system.
Yeah.
But still, depending. So we of course everything is around making the case around the transit system. What would be the ridership? What are the targets? But sometimes it makes sense just to look at the different modes of transportation. As I told you, Transdev, we bring all the solution, all modes of transportation. Right. We are not, stuck in one mode. I believe that we need to have the discussion with the authority. What's the final goal for the authority?
Except if you're going to do different transit, if you're going to think outside the box and think about different transit systems, you need to plan for that. So, for example, you think about the waterfront here. We're building buildings, all up and down Queen's Quay. A gondola system, I'm assuming, if we were to think about that, 5 times cheaper, but presumably the gondola system would have to do a loop. Yeah. Is there space here for that? or we already used up all that space?
I'm not, I can't answer, like that,
But I'm just thinking that if you want to plan something.
I believe it's a system really flexible.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, most of the big cities, they are using this system when you have, tracks, river to cross, when you have, really challenging environments where, launching a LRT system, it's complex or costly. So makes a lot of sense when we are closer on the river, when you have limited,
Well, we've got tracks here, and if you're crossing from center of Toronto, like the core of Toronto, even Front Street to get to Queen's Quay, for example, you're crossing the Gardiner, you're crossing railway tracks and so on. I mean, they're overhead, but it's not a huge distance. But would a gondola work for something like that, or do you need longer distances, like to the island?
No, they definitely, it's better. There is always we need to find a balance in each project. Of course, when it's too short, you can't really leverage sometimes a transit system. Right. It's like doing a LRT of 2 kilometers.
Not worth it.
Make no sense. Yeah. So we need to provide an added value on that. So of course we have to think about that, just throwing the ideas.
Yeah.
We need to make the analysis, but it could make sense depending on how you want to design that, how long, what would be the when you start the line, where it's the ending.
Interesting.
But definitely it makes sense, and it's happening, in a lot of the cities. Could make sense. It's not just one size fits all.
Well, I think the cost of transit, we did a study. I mean, the cost of transit is rising very rapidly. I think it's close to, Toronto now is close to $1 billion a kilometer. So if you could do it 5 times cheaper to get the benefit for passengers, I think that would be worth looking at.
And that's the same for the operation, by the way.
As well. Okay, not right, of course, because it's far less complex, right? Yeah.
That's
Arthur, thank you.
Thank
Great
you so much.
conversation. Really enjoyed the conversation. It looks like the sky's the limit in terms of transit if we're talking about gondolas. But as well, we're obviously looking forward to the Ontario line coming here and what the benefits that's going to bring. So great work, and glad to have Transdev involved in the operation of our transit system here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Toronto Talks, conversations with the leaders shaping the region's economy. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts.